Hey, it's Mariana, and thank you for joining me on the Commitment to Growth podcast, a platform dedicated to helping you build resilience for lifelong momentum. We chat about healing, mindset development, and how to live in your authentic truth, because often it's not our problems that cause our dissatisfaction, but everything around them that we haven't yet addressed. Thank you for joining me today, and let's get into this week's conversation. Welcome to the Commitment to Growth podcast, everyone. I am your host, Mariana, and founder of Commitment to Growth Resilience Coaching, a platform dedicated to helping you build the mindset, lifestyle, and heart to lead a resilient life. I am so happy to be here with you today because building a resilient heart is none other than what we are going to be doing today. I have been so excited and so inspired by this conversation. I don't think I've ever poured into an episode as much as I have with this one. I've never gone back into an episode and readjusted the content and changed the title and added things and taken things out ever before in the history of the Commit to Growth podcast solo episodes that have been more kind of planned ahead versus just sit down raw format. And because of that, I wanted this to be so special and so present. It is the evening as I'm recording this. I got everything done. I went for a run. I energized myself to be present here with you today because I seriously have goosebumps going into this conversation. I think I can safely say, just sitting here right now, that this might be one of the most powerful conversations, most powerful recordings I've ever done here on the podcast. And I really think that even though this is just a moment in your day as you're listening to it, this time that we have together might be a single drop in your ocean that truly creates ripples that will extend out into your ocean for years. And I am so privileged that I get to spend this time with you today and that you found the podcast and that this episode found you. If you're new, or you weren't here before to hear about the new monthly theme format of the Commitment to Growth podcast, essentially this new little kind of project I have chosen to take under my wing is that every month, at least for the rest of 2024, every month is going to have a specific theme. So we will be facilitating conversations around a specific topic. In April, our theme was healing the inner people pleaser. And May, as you're listening to this, or whenever you're listening to this, is how to allow more love into your life. So along with the It's Not That format of solo conversations that I have chosen to undertake as part of this monthly thematic sequence that I'm doing here for you, I've got a really exciting and beautiful guest interview about how authentic expression of self leads to more authentic connections, and of course the monthly Q&A, which by the way, I might have a guest helping me with that this month as well, somebody who is very, very special to me. So more on that to come. I am so excited for everything that we're going to be talking about today. And if you're here, let me just hold your hand for a moment and express my gratitude and my sincere appreciation for the fact that you chose to spend this time with me. If you're here, it's likely because something in the title stood out to you. Maybe you came across it on YouTube. If you're watching, by the way, if you're not, I'm sorry, but I have my yellow earrings today. I'm repping the Commitment to Growth brand colors today. So that's how you know it's an extra special day. But if you hear, maybe the title stood out to you and you feel within you that something is hindering you from creating or receiving the kind of love in your life that you desire, or pouring out to people without fear, or simply moving through life in a way which you are radiating the kind of love that you want to receive back. And that is such a big part of the reason why I wanted to record this for you today, among many other things that I'll get into later. But I just think it's a reminder that so many of us need once in a while, that we're allowed to let our guard down, that we're allowed to let ourselves be seen, that in being seen, we are so lovable and so desirable and so worthy of the love and abundance and intimacy that we crave. And my hope is that that is how you walk away from this episode feeling. We are going to be getting into a lot today, a lot of personal shares that I've never shared on the podcast before, and some really vulnerable conversations. And after that, we're going to be getting into 5 ways that you can open yourself up to receive more love in your life through adjusting simple but significant components of your daily routines, how you approach your relationships, and how you tailor your perspective to how you see the world. They're small, but they're so powerful, and they might not be what you think. I promise you. So I am super, super excited. And to really set the tone for this conversation, I'm going to share a few quotes today. And the first one I want to share with you is from the first ever self improvement book I ever read at a very dark time in my life. This book found me when I was really needing to open myself up to receive love. And that is 101 Truths for a Better Life by Humble the Poet. And in one of the chapters in that book, Humble says, if you have a valuable view of love and want it in abundance, the execution shouldn't be measured in how much love you throw out there. It should be measured in how much you let in. Just take a moment to sit with that. I think that we often feed ourselves the belief that in order to get more love, we have to do more and be more. But my goal with this conversation is really to help you see that there is already so much abundance, satisfaction, and inspiration available to you where you are right now and as you are right now. Because in allowing yourself to be seen as you are, life gifts you the mirrors and the gifts in the form of people, opportunities, and places that reflect back the parts of you that most want to be heard and seen and expressed. So we are going to get right into it. And as I mentioned, this is such a special topic for me. And after hearing your responses to Healing the Inner People Pleaser Month and how much it helped you, and for those of you that purchased the workbook and got back to me and told me about how powerful the prompts were for you, I really want to make it my goal to release a little something for you every month that is in accordance with the theme so that you can get more help on that healing journey or on the journey as you're following along with the podcast that month. So this month is no different. And because the theme of this month is how to let more love into your life, and this topic ignites my heart so much, I created something special for you. If this is something that you want and desire more for your journey of self-expansion and self-discovery, it is my abundant coaching container. So this is a resilience coaching mini container. And what that means is it's 3 sessions, 3 one-on-one 1-hour sessions with me. And you can kind of think of it like speed healing. If you're one of the ambitious, social, maybe slightly introverted with a dash of social anxiety girlies listening to this, maybe you're silently really romantic and sensible, you don't really jive with the kind of go-getter, hard, cold, traditional self-approaches to self-development and self-improvement, this is for you. This package is laser focused on giving you the solutions that you are looking for to help you understand the blockages in your life that are hindering you from creating the love and abundance that you desire. But in its laser focusedness towards solutions, it is meant to honor and respect the sensibility and power of your healing and your process. So the goal is to get at the seeds and work out from there, from what is causing those blockages within you. Maybe you feel like you're finally ready to enter the dating world again, but you want to do it as consciously as possible and learn how to radiate the energy that you want to attract. Maybe you're ready to explore more about your attachment style and you're wondering how it's showing up in relationships and how to honor it and bring it into conscious dialogue with a partner. Or maybe you're noticing that you have a really hard time taking compliments or asking for help or receiving help without feeling like you have to give something in return. And you're wondering what this might mean, what the deeper wound might be, or how this might be seeping into other areas of your life to hinder you from receiving more love and expanding yourself out. So, as I mentioned, we're diving deep into the subconscious blocks that are causing those blockages and creating growth and expansion from there. Because once we address the seed, we can plant a new one to give rise to the fruits that you desire to cultivate in your heart and mental garden. So, because this is a limited time offer, I am also throwing into this bundle my Healing the Inner People Pleaser Masterclass and my Identity Based Goals Masterclass recordings completely for free. They're about an hour and a half each, jam packed with informations and exercises. And I am also throwing in my Healing the Inner People Pleaser workbook, which, as you heard, is on sale on my website right now as you're listening to this. But if you join into the bundle, you get it completely for free. So, once again, the abundant mini resilience coaching container is open right now, available for enrollment only until May 30th. And if you're listening on the podcast, you are one of the lucky ones because I'm only advertising this on the podcast and in my Growth Hour Sisterhood, which, if you're not a part of yet, by the way, if you're a self-identifying woman, 18 years and older, you are always welcome to join us completely for free. The link to join is in the show notes of this episode. As I mentioned, only open until May 30th, and all you have to do is answer 3 questions, and I will reach out after that with the next steps. Those 3 questions take 2 minutes or less, and all you have to do is click the link in the show notes with the link to the Google form to answer those questions. So once again, completely limited time offer, low commitment if you're a busy girly that can't commit to a long-term coaching program, but you want something tangible and accessible and solution-packed and tools-oriented to get you in the direction that you want to head in. And only available until May 30th or until spots fill up. So head to the link in the show notes to grab your access to the 3 questions that you have to answer, and I will reach out to you after that. I am so excited, and I cannot wait to help you become and radiate the love that you desire. Make sure you get grabs on that as soon as possible. And that's it for announcements. Let's get right into the conversation. So, something that you may have heard me mention many times here on the Commit to Growth podcast, and if you're new here, it might be the first time of many that you hear me say this. I talk a lot about how vulnerability is such a way into the deepest parts of us that want to be seen. And it's one of the most powerful ways to allow more love into our lives because we are allowing ourselves to be seen for who we are and for what's hurting us, but and who we want to be on the other side of that pain or difficulty. And because of that, I'm going to walk the talk today. And I told you that I was going to share some things that I'd never shared before. And this is one of them. So I want to start today's conversation by telling you about a very moving conversation that I had with my grandmother about 2 months ago in Mexico City, right before I left for Los Angeles. So if you don't know, I was in Mexico City for just over a month, about 2 months ago, after dropping everything to pursue my coaching business full time. And I had a lot of time to spend with my paternal grandma, whose home I stayed in for the duration of those 5 weeks. And I haven't shared much of my family story here, but essentially, my mother and my father moved my younger sister and I up to Vancouver, Canada, where I reside now, when I was 6 and she was 3. My dad's side of the family is from Mexico. My mom's side of the family is from Cuba. My mom was born and raised in Mexico City, where she met my dad and had me and my sister. And on both sides of the family, but today I'm speaking to my paternal side of the family, there is a lot of generational trauma. Mexico experienced a lot of genocide as a result of colonialism, like many, many countries, including Canada, and subsequently a lot of emotional and physical and psychological harm that has transcended generations, a lot of poverty. It is largely still a patriarchal society that oppresses and abuses women and the rights of women and the respects of women. And within all of that generational trauma, one prominent theme is that my great-grandfather, so my dad's grandfather, and my grandfather, my dad's dad, both engaged in infidelity with their wives, who they were also very emotionally abusive towards. Now, this moving dialogue that I had with my grandmother, where the story starts, is when my grandma found out about my grandpa's disloyalty, infidelity towards her. My dad and his brother were 13 and 14, respectively. And my grandma, in her pain, in her sense of betrayal, she picked up and left. And for many years, there was a very estranged relationship between her, my dad, and my uncle. They didn't have contact for many years. They weren't close for many years. She wasn't very present in the picture after she left my grandfather. But when my dad was in his mid-20s, he found where my grandma was living in the States with her then partner and flew to ask her to return to Mexico and reintegrate herself into him and his brother's lives again and reunite with the family who she had felt a lot of embarrassment towards because of her decision to leave. And she did. She dropped everything, left her partner, and came with my dad to Mexico, where she has gone on to be a beautiful grandmother. I'm like, tearing up as I tell the story because she is so wonderful, and she was such a moving piece in me and my sister's life for the time that we were in Mexico. And in the times that she came to Vancouver, she was and continues to be such a part of my life. But after all of that, when myself, my sister, and her two other grandkids, my cousins, came into the picture, my grandma grew this deep belief, this deep fear that the four of us would come to find out about what she'd done as far as leaving my dad and my uncle. And for many years, she has felt so much immense shame around the story, and to the point where she is completely obsessed over perfectionism and being extremely apologetic and not standing up for herself and always taking blame for mistakes because she just wants to own and take away all of the pain that she assumes she placed on my dad and my uncle and subsequently her grandkids after her decision. And so when I was in Mexico 2 months ago, 2 nights before I left, I was sitting down with her having dinner. We were having like crackers and hummus or something. And I decided to ask her, I said, "Hey, Grandma, did you ever talk to Grandpa?" By the way, my grandpa is long gone. He passed away in 2001, so he's no longer in the picture. But I asked her, I said, "Hey, did you ever talk to Grandpa about what that was like for you, the pain it caused you, the damage it caused in you long term?" And she said, "Yeah, there were a few conversations, but I never got too involved, kind of gave me some half-hearted answer and then went really quiet. And I just kind of sat there and waited and just nodded and said, "Yeah, no, I understand." And she eventually said, she broke her silence with tears in her eyes, and she said, "Well, I can't complain too much, or I don't have a right to be angry." And I said, "Why, Grandma?" And she says, "Well, I made mistakes too, I left. I left my sons. I left them to fend for themselves. I left them to be raised by only a father without a mother figure." And she began to cry. And I just kind of held her hand and said, "Grandma, I understand. I understand your decision. I understand your pain. I understand why you did what you had to do, because at the end of the day, at the time, it was all you knew how to do to preserve your well-being, what was left of your well-being after that relationship." And she cried some more, as I am right now. and she says, "So you mean you don't love me less for that story?" And something in me like broke. And I said, "Of course not, Grandma. Of course not. Like I said, I understand. I see you." And then we just cried together, and I just held her and her hand after that. And why I wanted to tell you that story is because I think the thesis and the learning that we can all take away from this conversation is that you have to let go of who you've been to experience the life that you want to create. And that involves raising the bar for what you're willing to allow yourself to feel. You have to let go of who you've been and allow yourself to be for who you have become despite your past or despite the things that you think make you unlovable. Because can you imagine? The things that my grandma sees as flaws, I see as courage. I see as love. And she has held those things against herself, telling herself that those things make her less lovable, less desirable, less worthy of respect, kindness, and love. The prophet Rumi says, "Your task is not to seek love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." And really, when we're talking about how to let more love into our lives, I think this is the conversation that we're having. It's not, well, what do I have to do? Who do I have to become? What do I have to look like? What do I have to wear? What do I have to own? How much money do I have to make every year to put ourselves in a place of receiving more? It's simply, are you open? And what does receiving more mean to you? And what does that look like for you? Who do you have to be to allow love into your life? And what does that mean? So, why, in part, following my grandma's conversation, and part of the reason why I wanted to make How to Let More Love Into Your Life the theme for May is because this really was the theme of my life over the past 3 months. So, in case you didn't know because you didn't listen to past episodes or you didn't tune in on my Instagram, I dropped everything back in at the start of February of 2024 to travel for 2 months. I left my full-time job in healthcare to pursue my coaching business, what I'm doing right now, full-time. And that decision was a nudge that I had had for months. And I finally took the leap and handed in the letter of resignation, and on I went. I went to South America with my best friend, then I was in Mexico for 5 weeks, and then I got to go to Los Angeles for a podcasting event at the LA Convention Center. And this was such a turning point in my life that allowed me to see that the things that came into my life after that big leap of faith were life's expression of love. Part of allowing ourselves to let more love into our lives is about adjusting our perspective to see the things that coincidentally or unexpectedly come into our lives as life's gifts to us. Not just coincidences or not just things that just happen because who knows, right? I really think that when you stop to acknowledge the subtleties and the synchronicities that have happened in your life, or the way that life has played out in certain moments and certain encounters with people, those are life's expressions of love. Life is saying to you, hey, I want you to meet this person for this reason, for your growth, for your expansion, for your experience of romance, maybe, or just deep connection with a friend. I want you to quit your job and start your own business because you are courageous enough, you are smart enough, you are strategic enough, you are capable enough. It's like the first time your parent, when you were maybe learning how to ride a bicycle, it's like the first time your parent takes the training wheels off or lets go of the bicycle and turns out you're just pedaling by yourself. You thought mom or dad was behind you holding the seat to keep you upright, but you're riding by yourself. That's love. It's life saying, you might be afraid, but I'm letting go of the seat. I'm letting go of your hand because you can do this. And in life letting go, you discover yourself. You discover everything that you're capable of. And I really had so many of these moments when I was on travels, like just finally being out of the routines that were no longer serving me, a career that was draining me instead of fueling me in healthcare. All of a sudden you're away from that and you choose to step away from all of that, and you're able to see the other things that life has in store for you and wants you to experience. And especially with travel, because I was in completely new places in South America, you're kind of at the mercy of like, I'm just learning this place and the people. All I could do was surrender to the moment and listen to the voice of my desires. When I got quiet enough to allow my heart to speak louder, that's when things started to shift. And I kid you not, things started falling from the sky, it felt like. So, a couple examples that I can give you right off the bat here. When I got to Mexico, I said I'm going to dedicate this time to my business and revamping it and making it what I want it to look like. I don't know how, but my why, my purpose is so strong that I'm gonna set off. Do you want to know what happened? My beautiful beloved cousin Gabby is one of the most famous wedding photographers in all of Mexico. And one morning at 3 a.m., she texted me and said, "Hey, I need help with a shoot I have at my house. Can you please come and help me with the lighting and holding the reflectors? And I'll pay you." And I said, "You know what, girl? How about instead of paying me monetarily, you take some pictures of me for my website. I really, really need them." She said, "No problem." Right there, free personal branding photos worth thousands of dollars. Okay? A couple days later, I reunited with a wonderful friend who I had not seen or heard from in 15 years after one trip in 2009 to Mexico when I was 9 years old. And this person, we like met up for coffee. It was amazing. Turns out this person's now a music producer. And I said, "Hey, I have a podcast and I've wanted to revamp my intro music for a long time." He said, "I got you, no problem. What are the odds?" Second thing, a girlfriend of a cousin is super specialized in business. Her and I like sat down at a family gathering one day and she said, "Oh, tell me about what you're doing." Her and I went to coffee a couple times and she helped me with my systems and gave me marketing tips. And she even got a group of women together for me to host a women's circle in Mexico. She got her friends, her sister-in-law together, and all of those things given to me. Why? I choose to think that they were given to me because I had a strong enough knowing in my purpose and in what I wanted to contribute to the world that life said, "Here you go. You're on it. You're on your mission. You have a direction. I'll leave, like, the rest is up to me." And really, I think that you might be wondering, what does this have to do with allowing more love into our lives? And I'm here to tell you that it has everything to do with letting love into our lives. My gosh, how much time do we spend as human beings buffering ourselves from life? We are so afraid of when the next shoe is going to drop. We are so afraid of when the joy that we're feeling right now is going to dissipate and turn into pain. We are so afraid of, we think we're constantly in the calm before the storm. And this is a concept that I learned from the great writer Brianna Wiest, who I've talked about here a couple times. She calls this our upper limit of positivity. So what she says is essentially the amount of joy that you've accustomed to experiencing in your life is the amount of joy that you'll allow yourself to allow in before you self-sabotage when you receive more. So take two scenarios here. Say in one scenario, you have an individual who grew up in a stable household with a very stable income from parents whose parents were secure and attentive to their needs and celebrated them and were attuned to their emotional needs and their physical needs and gifted them on holidays. They grew up fairly stable. Okay, they have a good upper limit of positivity because they've known a lot of joy and safety and security in their lifetime. Take another individual who grew up in a very insecure household. Maybe there was some kind of physical, emotional, drug abuse in the household. Maybe the only times that things were good was when they were at school with friends and they got home and life was living hell again, right? Maybe they had to be the providers from a really young age of financial means for their family, they might not have a very high limit of positivity because they've only ever known chaos and dissatisfaction and disappointment and scarcity. The idea here is that either individual, whenever they reach a place in their life in which they receive more joy or positivity than they are subconsciously used to, they will self-sabotage back into the amount that they know. Listen to that for a moment. How many of us don't check that? How many of us are like, oh my gosh, life is going too well right now. I feel too good in my skin, too happy in this relationship, too secure in my financial earnings. Then you suddenly find a reason to bring yourself back down to what you know. You're like, oh, but my friendship with this person isn't going so well. But you know what? I still don't have the house I want. Ugh, surely this is the calm before the storm, and we self-sabotage back because we don't think that we're capable of having that amount of love and joy in our lives. We don't think we deserve it. How much of the expansiveness of the human experience do we rob ourselves of when we unintentionally, subconsciously bring ourselves back down instead of telling ourselves that we deserve the expressions of love that life is giving us because it wants us to expand. Life wants you to believe that you are deserving of the love it wants to give you. And I think we forget too, emotions are alchemy. Life is about a series of alchemical moments. If you don't know what alchemy is, the definition by dictionary.com says that alchemy is any magical power or process of transmuting a common substance, usually of little value, into a substance of great value. Think about any time that you've been heartbroken, you experienced deep loss, grief, anger, betrayal. What followed that? Maybe you're a writer or a poet like me, and some great pieces of writing came from those emotions. Maybe you danced. You might not be a dancer. Maybe you danced in your living room a ton. Maybe you discovered that you wanted to be a dancer, right? Maybe it led to some really incredible conversations between you and a partner, you and a parent, or a loved one. That is alchemy. It is transmuting the lows into something with purpose, into something that reflects your experience back to you and says, I created something from this. I became something from this. And it's reflected back to you in the artist that created something from that alchemy. The more we allow ourselves to feel, the more capacity we have to have an experience, an expansive life experience with limitless creation and growth. And that really is part of raising our upper limit of positivity and allowing more love into our lives. It's saying, I signed the contract of life that says that the human experience is innately intricate and complex and full of emotions, that I have the gift of feeling. Imagine the joy that you experience now because you know the pain that you had to navigate to feel the joy that you feel right now. Imagine the gratitude that you feel right now as a result of your losses, the victory, the success you feel right now as a result of your failures. Part of letting love into your life is creating purpose from the lows, from the times in which you have felt unloved by life, left behind by life, and choosing to see how it really was actually giving you something to grow. And we're going to get into that later in the 5 ways to let more love into your life that we're going to be talking about. But I wanted to say all that for you to remember that you allow more love into your life when you surrender control. Part of trusting that life wants to give you love is allowing yourself to surrender control and walk with faith. You might not know where you're going. You might not know how you're going to make it happen, but you know you will. with enough of a why, with enough of a purpose, with enough passion, with enough kind-heartedness, the path yields itself. Now, we're going to get into our 5 ways to let more love into your life here. So, some of them might not be what you expect. So, I encourage you to be present. Let me walk you through these 5 ideas, these 5 concepts, these 5 ways to slightly but significantly shift the landscape of your life and how you become a magnet for the love, abundance, depth, and intimacy that you desire from life and other people. The first one says, the goal of your relationships should be to create belonging, not appeasement. How about that? If you were part of the Healing the Inner People Pleaser conversation last month, and this is all too familiar, but if you're not, welcome. This is how you create more love in your life, and let me show you how, as counterintuitive as this might seem. So, there is a wonderful, inspiring powerhouse of researchers. She's one of my favorite human beings on the planet. Her name is Brené Brown. And Dr. Brené Brown, in her research on vulnerability and shame, she found, and I quote, the opposite of belonging is fitting in. The opposite of belonging is fitting in. She defines belonging as the innate human desire to be part of something larger than us. It is the connection we feel when we experience true acceptance, support, and validation from others. Belonging involves being valued, accepted, and understood within social groups of communities where individuals can express their authentic selves without fearing judgment or rejection. When you hear that definition of belonging, what do you think fitting in means? And why it's the opposite? Did you hear the key word in that definition? She said true acceptance, support, and validation. True. To dismantle everything that is not honesty. Why you should seek to create belonging and not fitting in or appeasement is because growth can only happen from a place of authenticity. Listen to that again. Growth can only happen from a place of authenticity. If you are in a stage in your life right now where you are unhappy with your relationships, maybe you're unfulfilled, you feel like so much is lacking, you don't feel seen, you don't feel heard, you don't feel inspired by the people in your life, do you truly feel like in those relationships you are being yourself? Or are you keeping yourself small? Are you responding to others in a certain way to satisfy them? Like agreeing with their opinions when you fundamentally don't, or laughing at their jokes when you fundamentally don't, or sacrificing your schedule and your time for people who ask you for more than you can deliver. Do you feel like you belong right now? Are you celebrated for who you are beyond what you do, for the person that is behind the work that you do? Are you welcome to express yourself for who you are? You cannot expect to grow or expand if you are being dishonest with yourself about who you are and what you desire. And really, I think so much of the loneliness that we feel is because we don't have a clear definition of belonging. And really, belonging starts with ourselves, right? We can't teach somebody can't teach us how to belong. We have to tell ourselves first and understand for ourselves first what we need to feel seen, heard, valued, and loved, so that we can guide people to love us the way we need. Authenticity drives connection, and it has to be your foundation for intimacy. Because when intimacy is built above anything that isn't authenticity, I don't think it's authenticity at all. There is a beautiful quote in the book Liberated Love by Mark Grove that I'm currently reading right now. And I was literally on a run when I heard this. I was listening to the audiobook, and he said this quote, and I just stopped dead in my tracks and played it back like twice, 3 times, 4 times. And he says, intimacy is another way to say, into me, I see. Into me, I see, so that I can better see you and better show you how to see me. What this quote gets at is that really is the foundation of intimacy. It's our deep desire to be seen and held for who we are and expanded from the truth of who we are. So that's number one. The goal of your relationships should be to create belonging, not appeasement. All right, number two, another big one here. This one is, how are you expecting love, and how is that hindering you from receiving it? So this is really interesting because it kind of contradicts what I just told you in the previous point, but hear me out. So oftentimes actually, I should say, we have a very specific idea of how we want people to show us love, how we think we need them to show us that they love us and appreciate us and see us. But I think we forget that we all love differently, and we all express that love and gratitude to each other differently. And because of that, when we are so hell-bent on being loved a certain way, of receiving love a certain way, we fail to see the ways in which the people in our lives are expressing their love to us in ways that are different from what we expect. And I think we forget too that we can learn a lot about people and how they express love, right? If somebody is really present with you, if somebody is really attentive to you, gives you a lot of quality time, gives you a lot of acts of service, right? It's kind of like the 5 love languages. What might that say about how they need to be loved? And not only in you dissolving an idea of how you need them to love you, but maybe how you thought you needed to love them. When you loosen the grip on those ideas enough to ask them genuinely, how do you need to be seen right now? How do you feel most appreciated and loved? Think about the vulnerability and the growth and the depth in that conversation alone. And it all started by removing your grip enough on some ideas to see and pay notice to and pay attention to. So much of allowing more love into our lives, as I mentioned, is releasing control. And releasing control often looks like just observing, so that you can open your eyes to the ways in which you were closed-eyed before because you were walking with an expectation. It's kind of like learning your partners or your loved ones' conflict languages, right? So if you didn't listen to the second ever monthly Q&A of the podcast, I talked about those there, and I'll talk about them here quickly. Our conflict languages is how we show up to conflict based on how we learned conflict in our early years. So if you grew up in a household where conflict was people shouting at each other and lots of blame being thrown around and people defending themselves and nobody ever coming to a conclusion, somebody always having to be right, that's likely how you'll approach conflict. And if somebody starts a difficult conversation with you, your mind goes to those memories and says, I have to protect myself right now. I have to defend myself. I have to make myself be right. Whatever that takes, because that's how you learned to derive safety from conflict in your early years. But what those memories link to is a deeper fear of conflict. If somebody has a difficult conversation with me about something I did wrong, a dish I left out, that is pointing to I'm unworthy, I'm not safe right now. It's highlighting imperfections in me. Oh my gosh. So part of noticing how people need to be loved involves looking at how they show up in conflict. Because if you have somebody in your life, a loved one, a friend, a parent, who is super quick to defend themselves and try to be right about the situation, maybe they have a really deep fear that they aren't smart enough, so they have to be right. Maybe they have a deep fear that the pain they caused you is going to make you leave them. So they have to jump right away to solutions or make it right away, or tell you that you're over exaggerating things, like there's no way I did that, right? Meeting each other in those most vulnerable moments and observing and listening to what's between the lines, to what's actually speaking out when we're lashing out or shutting down, that is how you let more love into your life, by opening yourself up to observing people's experiences. And hopefully, if you're in a conscious partnership where the person feels safe enough to do the same, you allow each other into your healing experience. And by opening yourselves up to that intimacy and vulnerability, you open yourself up to love. So, once again, number 2, how are you expecting love, and how is that hindering you from receiving it? All right. Number 3 is something you might not have thought about, and it is make play a regular component of your day. I love this one, and I have been talking about it to literally everybody in my life because it's such a component of my life that can you hear in my voice? I sound like a child speaking right now. I think we forget that inner child work doesn't just show up in relationships and attachment theory, but rather it is a regular component of our daily lives to listen to that part of us when it comes up. Because our inner child isn't just the part of us that speaks in times of fear, in times of abandonment, in times of rejection. It's the part of us that speaks when you're walking through a toy store and the figurine, the puzzle on the table, on the display table looks super interesting, and you find yourself engrossed in it for 10 minutes instead of walking through with your friend. It's the part of you that, how many of us have been in the kitchen cooking and a really good song comes on and you like start waving around the spatula, you're like moving the pan a certain way, but while your eggs are getting burned, or you're just dancing. That's your inner child. That's the part of you that doesn't give two things about somebody's opinion, because it is so engrossed in the experience and how it's making that part of you feel, and that overrides how much it freaking cares about what somebody thinks, okay? So when I say it's not that you fear love, it's that you're afraid to be seen, I don't just mean that you're afraid to be seen by others, I mean that you may be afraid of seeing yourself too. And I really think that that's why we don't allow ourselves to play or experience awe enough, is because we've come to believe that dancing when you don't know how to dance, or singing when you don't know how to sing, or playing a puzzle on a display table as an adult isn't acceptable, right? Those experiences that ignite something, that ignite a primal curiosity and fun and presence within us, we've shunned to be so unacceptable that when we experience them, we're like, no, this isn't acceptable. This isn't what adults do. Think about when you see somebody on the street doing something that isn't socially acceptable. Or like maybe you're the friend at the party that when everybody's dancing, you're the one sitting on the couch because you're like, they're weird. Or I can't dance. That would be weird. But I'm here to tell you that we don't accept in other people what we don't accept in ourselves. We do not accept in others what we don't accept in ourselves. Think about the times in which you've, in your head, maybe silently judged someone for street dancing, or dancing in the street, or talking really loudly over the phone even, or playing really loudly with your kids in the park, maybe even getting on the playground, right? maybe the first voice you hear in your mind is, oh my gosh, that's so unacceptable, so inappropriate. Adults don't do that. What follows that voice? Let me ask you that. What follows that voice? Is it a silent, I wish I could do that too without caring? Is it a silent, I wish I could dance and be so in love with the fact that I know how to dance that I am not ashamed to do it in public? Because usually our ego can get louder than the voice of our truth. And I think that that is where the key to love is in those moments, is noticing what voice is speaking out, but which quiet whisper follows it, and what that says about the yearnings we have to let loose and care less about opinions and open ourselves up to the human experience more, to feeling more, to just living without weight of judgment so much, right? So when you practice play regularly, when you allow yourself in between work to play a song and dance in your living room or in your office nook, or just sing in your office nook, or play a game, like put a costume on with your kids and play with them, or with your partner, like just get goofy and silly and laugh at things that maybe you don't usually laugh about, like a kids show or something, right? Listen to those curiosities within you that want to pull you in certain directions to try things, or just get engrossed in things and get into flow and get into presence. When you allow yourself that, you're not only showing love to that curious part of you, you are being in the present moment. And being in the present is already such a way of expanding your heart, because when you're not living in the past or the future so much, you're open to what's in front of you. The abundance is in the present, it's not in the future, it's in what you have right now. So allow yourself to lose yourself in a song, in some laughter, in watching somebody dance or joining in with them, whatever that looks like. You deserve to express that part of you, not just so that you can learn yourself better and remove the shame that you might feel for having those nudges, but so that when you see somebody else doing the same thing, you see your silent whispers mirrored in them, and you can appreciate them so much more for that courage and for that bravery. So, number 3, make play a regular component of your day so that you fear seeing yourself less. That is number 3. Number 4, and this is a really easy but super significant tweak that I have seen the magic in multiple times in my life. Number 4 is practice opening your heart before going out into the day. What do I mean by this? So, I recently have also been reading a book called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And in it, he talks a lot about keeping our hearts open and what that does for our experience of life. And he talks about this concept of samskaras. What samskaras are energies that we feel in our heart center. And he explains this as when you're conscious and not living as a victim of your thoughts, you can allow energies to pass through you without them getting blocked. So you see something that angers you, let it pass through you. You see something that upsets you, let it pass through you. Do not let it get blocked in there, because what energy does, it's like a charged beam of light. It'll just circle around itself like an atom with protons and neutrons and electrons, right? It'll just circle around itself. That is not the same as the concept of spiritual bypassing, which has, just let everything go. I also don't feed into that, because I think that so much of our growth and power is in listening and cultivating a relationship to our emotions. But the core idea here is that the more that you let emotions and thoughts and memories that don't serve you anymore to just run in loops around themselves, you're blocking yourself from the love that life wants to give you. So One really quick thing that you can do at the start of your day, literally can take you 60 seconds to 10 minutes if you want to, as a meditation or just a conscious practice of grounding, is picture a light radiating from your chest. White, golden, whatever the color and radiance of love looks like for you. And just feel your chest open and expand and radiate that light out. And allow that light that you envision yourself radiating out be infused with your joy and the kindness that you want to show other people and the ways that you want to make people's day. And let it inspire you. Just imagine it radiating it out from you. That might sound woo-woo, but when you open your heart and connect to the energy of abundance around you, you're able to pour love out without fear standing in the way, because you've already placed yourself in the state of, I can let love out freely without fear. You automatically shift into what feels true to you in giving love and what allows you to do so most authentically. Is it smiling at strangers? Is it paying for somebody's coffee? Is it calling a friend or loved one in between work breaks and telling them how much you love them and appreciate them? Right? When you envision that light pouring out to you, when you imagine that light pouring out from you, what actions in a day infuse you with that same feeling, like I just described? And when you walk into the world like that, you're radiating that authenticity, you're radiating that energy of giving, so that when it's mirrored back to you in receiving, you're ready for it. You don't fear it. You know where it's coming from because you know what you're radiating out. I have done this so many times, and those are the days where I get the most hellos on the street, the most highs on the street. A little miracle happens, like I had like somebody pays for my coffee, or I have an opportunity, like a work opportunity fall from the sky that day. I did this when I was in Los Angeles, like the first day of the podcast movement conference. I went out in my favorite ever knitted sweater. It's like got full of flowers, and I got it in Argentina, and it's my favorite item of clothing in the world. I did this practice before leaving the house, and I kid you not, I was also wearing my favorite earrings. I had just bought them, and 6 strangers on the street stopped and said, "Your sweater is beautiful." People like yelled from across the street and said, "You look amazing today." And it was so cool because I was just vibing. I was just living my life. I was like, had some music on. I was having so much of my own fun. And I was like, wow, that is so cool. And I met some amazing people that night at the event too. So practice opening your heart before going out into your day and see how life mirrors back to you the love that you're capable of pouring out. That's number 4. And last, but certainly not least, number 5 is practice giving meaning to the events in your life. When you make an intentional habit to look at the ways in which life, the universe, God, whatever you call your higher power if you have one, when you look at the ways in which it is giving you its hand in your day, the more you open yourself up to seeing the love that life wants to give you. This has kind of been a theme throughout this conversation, but this is where your awareness expands. And in your awareness expanding beyond just your personal experience, just your inner world, you open yourself up to the grandioseness of life. And you can learn to see how your life has worked out to get you where you are today. Think about the synchronicities that had to happen for some of the biggest soul shifting events in your life. Where were you on the day that you met your partner versus where you should have been that day or where you thought you needed to be? Maybe there was an accident on the bridge that you take to work, but because you spilled coffee on yourself that morning, you left late, and by the time you left late, the bridge was already closed. Had you left minutes earlier, that could have been you. Maybe you had a question that you couldn't answer yourself, or you were like this big doubt about life or like a job or whether to stay or leave a relationship, and then you have a conversation with somebody where they just say something that you're like, that was the answer. Now I know what I need to do. Take a look at the ways in which certain events in your life played out and why they were gifts. Why some things had to happen, the breakup, the being let go from a job, the moving towns, why those things had to happen for you to become who you are today, why you ended up at that coffee shop where you met that friend or your partner, and everything that had to happen, every moment, every second that had to align the way that it did for you to end up in that coffee shop on that specific day, at that specific time, in the specific moment that you met that person or that interaction happened. You have to give meaning to those experiences to get into the habit of gratitude and have an attitude of gratitude, and really give purpose to the events in your life, give meaning to the timeline of the things that have happened in your life and why they had to happen. For me personally, another really miraculous event that happened in my 2 months of travel is that when I booked my ticket to LA, I had the ticket to the event, but I didn't have a ticket from Mexico to Los Angeles. I was still like, oh, I got the event, but like, I don't know if I'll go because, like, what if I don't have the money, or what if I can't make it? Like, what if it's not where I'm meant to do? Like, all these doubts. And then I flew from Argentina to Mexico and had a layover in Colombia. And when I was in Colombia in the airport, I got called to, like at the gate, I got called up to see a flight attendant, and the flight attendant said, "Hey, I see you have a ticket to Mexico, but do you have a flight out of Mexico?" And I was like, "No, I'm Mexican." And she was like, "Yeah, but you're traveling with a Canadian passport." And I was like, "Oh, well, yeah, I know I'm leaving like end of March." She said, "Well, that's great, but I can't let you leave unless you have proof to show that you're leaving the country within 3 months." So when I tell you I had to buy a flight from Mexico to Los Angeles in 5 minutes, the cheapest one I found, to show her and give the flight number to show proof that I was leaving the country, otherwise I wasn't leaving Colombia, that is the moment that I was like, okay, so I have to do this. So I'm meant to do this because I was just put in a position to have to buy the plane ticket right now. And you know what happened? You want to know what happened? The cheapest flight I found was on a Sunday night. So I would have only had the full day Monday in Los Angeles to sightsee and have a bit of touristy time before the event, Tuesday to Friday. And I left on the following Saturday. And I had told myself, I was like, oh, if I go to LA, I'm going to want a few extra days to just like sightsee and see the city. You want to know what happened? My flight out of LA was booked for Sunday, March 24th at 7 p.m. 2 days later, I got an email from the airline company to tell me that I had gotten rescheduled to 7 a.m. that same day. So I had 2 days of full sightseeing, 2.5 days really, of full sightseeing in Los Angeles from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. All because I leaned in and said, okay, if I'm meant to do this and this is what's making me, this is what's telling me and letting me know that I am meant to do this. And I was rewarded for it. I choose to say that I was rewarded for that leap of faith in that direction of my dreams and my purpose. And I'm sure that if you look close enough, you'll see life's hand in those moments of your life, giving you that same opportunity as well. So one more time, number 5, practice giving meaning to the events in your life. And that is everything that I have for you in this month's edition of It's Not That You Fear Love, It's That You're Afraid to Be Seen. And I hope that you leave this conversation ready to be accepted and loved for your truth, and to walk with your authenticity on your sleeve, and to receive, to surrender, to walk alongside faith, with faith leading the way, because that is the path to freedom. That is the path to abundance. That is the path to enlightenment, I really believe. And not only can you make it happen for yourself, you deserve it. You deserve the love that you so freely give other people. And I hope that this episode made you realize that. And I'm very excited for what is to come for you after this conversation. So if you enjoyed it, if you found resonance in that, if you felt that this episode helped you expand and have little breakthroughs that you didn't think you'd have today, make sure that you send it to a friend who would benefit from it as well. Make sure to like this episode, subscribe to the channel so that you are here for future editions of the It's Not That series and future monthly themes, because we've got some really exciting ones coming up for the summer. If this resonated with you or you found some kind of mirror and some of the things that I said today, make sure to fill out the quick 2-minute 3-question questionnaire in the show notes to the Google form and apply to get into my abundant coaching container. It's going to be amazing. Like I said, 3 1-hour one-on-one sessions with me to skyrocket your process towards allowing more love into your life and becoming a conscious creator, a conscious attractor of the love that you desire. And if you're looking for something else that's really, really fun to do this month in this journey, I am hosting my How to Become the Love You Seek journal club, oh my gosh, within my Growth Hour Sisterhood. This is a bi-monthly space for women aged 18 and up where we meet. We have a monthly masterclass every month. Again, along the lines of what we speak about here on the podcast, and we do a journal club. And the one that is coming up as you're listening to this episode is on May 23rd, Thursday, May 23rd at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So that's 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and I believe 9 p.m. Central Time. So it's a little bit later in the evening, but it's a really powerful experience. It's just an hour, totally free of charge. You can check out the link to join the sisterhood in the show notes. There's 224 of us in there right now, which is so insane and beautiful. So it's a wonderful space to meet other women who are like-minded and passionate about personal growth and abundance and connection. And make sure that you're connected on Instagram. Once again, it's at Commitment to Growth. You can find handles to my social media in the show notes, and send me a message on there if this resonated with you, or you have questions, or you had a breakthrough throughout this episode that you want to let me know about. I'm always so happy reading your messages. I absolutely love to hear about what they did for you and how I can show up better for you in future episodes. And just the fact that you're listening means so much. I mean that with so much sincerity, and today is no different. Thank you so much for being here today, for opening yourself up to receive more love with me, from me. And please remember that everything you desire, you're worthy of, especially the love you seek. But look inward first, because you might find a glimpse of eternity in there first. Love you guys, and I will see you in the next episode. Have a great day.